Moolala is brought to you by the nonprofit credit counseling agency Credit Canada. There are a near infinite number of personal finance books out there. There is so much to read, all sorts of great insight. And the key thing about personal finance is you have to do something with these books. So we're bringing Erin Lowry back onto the show to talk about her new workbook. So she is the creator of the Broke Millennial Series, and she's now launched this really super practical workbook that we are going to talk about today. Erin joins us from the Upper West Side in Manhattan, probably the best place on the earth, except for where I live. Hello, Erin.
Hi, wonderful to be back.
Thank you for joining us again. Why did you decide that what was next was a workbook?
Well, I feel like you really nailed it there, that there's an infinite number of things we can read, and not just the books. There are the blogs, the websites, the podcasts you can listen to, the TikToks you can watch, the everything. There's so much information. And I would almost say there's too much information.
I would agree with you.
And a big part of that is that you can kind of end up in either an analysis paralysis situation, or just you continue to consume what you're supposed to do, but you don't ever pair it with action. And without putting pen to paper and actually making a plan, your financial life is never actually going to improve. So the workbook, the intent anyway, if you actually pick up the pen or pencil, whatever you prefer, is to make yourself have to create a plan for how to improve your financial life.
You have a section called How to Interact with the workbooks. Okay, we need pencil, pen, writing material of some sort. Is it like we're binging Succession, or is it work on it an hour a day for a month and you go?
I don't even think you need to do an hour a day for a month. I would almost encourage it to be something you're thinking about doing over a 4 to 6 month period, because I feel like an hour a day for a month is almost, and pardon the analogy, a bit of a crash diet feeling, that you're going to perhaps put yourself either into a deprivation situation, which by the way is never once encouraged in this book. Please do not do that. In fact, I advocate for a fun fund. You should set some money aside for a little pressure release when you are in a season of your life where maybe you're paying off a lot of debt or trying to save up a lot of money to buy a house or whatever it is. And the only big rule I would say is I want you to read the introduction, which is chapter 1, and then chapters 2 and 3 chronologically, because through those, we're doing a couple of key things. One, a bit of an analysis on your emotional relationship to money, because that's going to come into play throughout the workbook. But the other big part is establishing common language so that as we continue on and I say something like debt to income ratio, you understand very well what that means.
What is she talking about?
Exactly. Right. But after that, hop around. If you're someone who wants to do the hard stuff first, do the hard stuff first. If you're someone who wants a little bit of a nice appetizer that might feel a little easier, like how to set boundaries in your financial life with your friends, which might sound easy on paper. It's much harder in theory. Then, or in practice, I should say, then hop there first.
Oh my gosh, I want to hop there right now. How do you set boundaries with your friends when it comes to money?
You need to be honest. That's first and foremost.
Okay.
For me, I would say, so the third book in the series is Broke Millennial Talks Money, which is script stories and advice to navigate awkward financial conversations, a mouthful of a subtitle. But it's so important because you can do this workbook, you can do all of the things right, you can build the perfect financial life for yourself. But if you can't set a boundary with people in your life, whether that's friends, family, coworkers, other loved ones, it's so easy to let other people spend your money. Because if you're not willing to either say no or say, I would love to, but this particular thing doesn't work for me, here's another solution. It's why so many people can end up in debt over friends' bachelorette parties, or, feeling like we're all college buddies. Maybe you're a teacher and they work in finance, and those are two very different salaries, but you're trying to play keep up with them. Or maybe it's just you have very different interests at this phase of your life. They wanted to spend $500 to go to the Taylor Swift concert. And as much as you enjoy some of her albums, that wasn't necessarily a top value for you, but you still spent the money because you wanted to be part of the fun.
Right. You have a chapter called The Dreaded B Word. I'm going to assume you don't mean boundary. I'm going to assume it's a word that rhymes with smudge it. Am I right?
Yes, that would be a correct assumption.
So how do you think about the smudge it, the budget?
I wish that everyone could reframe it in their heads to just consider that all you need to know is how much is coming in and how much is going out. And that puts you in control. Like there doesn't need to be this whole restriction around everything, unless that's what works for you, then, congrats.
Hooray.
That can be your style. But just because a particular style worked for your best friend or worked for this personal finance guru that you followed or worked for your coworker who's now evangelizing about it constantly, that's great. That doesn't mean that's what's the right fit for you. And also, as your life unfolds, your budget also needs to change as well. The budgeting style I use now at 34 is very different than the style I used when I first moved to New York City at 21. And I just want everyone to reframe it. I love the term spending plan. That's something that's become a little bit more common within personal finance. That makes it feel a little bit more fun, but also that it's just a control mechanism. It's a way to put you in control of your money, no matter how much or how little there is every month.
We call it a sustainable spending plan over here because you want to build something that you can follow over the course of months and years and not have it be that binge and purge kind of thing. You talk about how expensive life is, and it really, really is. For those who are newer in their career, perhaps they have a really hard time balancing the today and tomorrow. What advice do you have on that? And how does it manifest in the workbook? What sort of questions? What am I putting my pencil and paper to?
Well, some of that in the beginning is thinking through things like, what would retirement look like for you? What is your dream scenario? What dream life do you want to be living in the future? And once we can really create an image for ourselves, it becomes a lot easier to invest for it. And I use that word very carefully because a lot of times we say save for retirement. I feel that that's a misnomer. You should be investing for retirement. If you want to save, great. It's just going to take a heck of a lot more money to achieve the same goal compared to actually investing your money and using, depending on where you are, vehicles like a 401k, speaking to the American audience.
Yep.
RSSP. Am I going to get that right?
RSP. Yeah. Well done. Yes.
Close. But one, I think really thinking about future you for some people is motivational. The other big part of it is just the little incremental amounts. What I always fear happens for folks is feeling like, well, 1%, what difference does it make? It can make so much difference over years, especially when we add compound interest for one. But for two, it's more about just starting with as much as you can, which might be 1%, and then increasing that by half to 1%, let's say every 3 to 6 months. And then you're slowly working your way there so that it doesn't feel like this huge pain point where all of a sudden you've gone from 0 to 10%, because you are really going to feel that in your paycheck. That very slow inching tends to work very effectively.
You mentioned your husband. I have been married for almost 23 years. It's a lifetime. How do you recommend couples work their way through this workbook? Because I can see it being a really powerful way to have a non-judgmental, catalyst to a conversation that every couple should have.
Well, there is a whole chapter about how to have financial conversations, how to get financially naked. And in that chapter, I'd recommend you each read it separately and then come together, because there are questions that I want you to be thinking through. And I also give a bit of a playbook about how to actually handle the conversation, including please have a very strong poker face. Make sure that when you're going into this conversation, if
oh my God, I would fail at that. What are you talking about? A poker face? So I would need a ski mask. I'd need my own ski mask.
Then maybe everybody turns their back to each other for this conversation, or a ski mask. That just might feel a little scarier.
Yeah.
But to make sure that you're creating a safe environment to share vulnerable things. Finances can be really vulnerable, particularly if you've made a mistake. So if it's the first time you've had this conversation with your partner and you're going to share, hey, I have $7,000 in credit card debt. If your partner makes a face of any kind, really, whether it's shock, horror, a grimace, whatever it is, that's going to fracture trust a little bit. You're going to feel very insecure, very self-conscious, and that can be really hard to rebuild. So please have a poker face through all of this and make sure that you're also acknowledging where debt comes from and how it came to be, as opposed to just being like, red flag, there's debt, I'm done.
Right.
That's never the answer, in my opinion.
Now, workbook connotes a learning environment. You have a chapter called Do You Have a Gold Star in Personal Finance? A lot of your readers may think, oh my God, I'm never going to have one because I'm, terrible about this, or I believe that I will always be terrible about this. How do you use the phrase a gold star?
Well, to me, a gold star really has more to do with getting the basics of your financial life under control. So you're building the emergency savings fund. You are starting to invest for retirement. It doesn't mean that you are flawless in all of these categories. You've started to build or improve your credit score if you need to, or you're protecting it if you already have a strong credit score. All of these key parts that make up our financial life, the gold star either means you've achieved it, or I would also say you're on your way to achieving it. That's something that is also incredibly important, is to monitor your progress. And that is also a huge through line of the workbook, is that instead of just fixating each month on this is where I am, oh no, because that's how a lot of us tend to feel, it's this is where I am, but look where I was 4 months ago. It's amazing that I have achieved this month in 4 months, and keep focusing on your own benchmark.
As you said, there's a part of your workbook that's linear in nature, but much of it is not. You can dip and pick and choose. I'm going to ask you a tough question. What is the single most important question that you ask in this workbook that exceeds the importance of all others that people could sort through?
How does money make you feel?
And why do you believe that's the most important? I love your answer.
I believe that's the most important, because all too often we think we can just muscle through handling money because this is how you're quote unquote supposed to handle money. And we're going to get told that by countless people. If you do not know what your emotional relationship to money is, and you keep ending up in a cycle, I'm going to use this as an example, where every month you run up your credit card a little bit and then you pay it off, then you run it up and you pay it off. And there's like a stimulus happening there. If you're not addressing your why and why you have that relationship, it's not going to get fixed. So you're just going to get trapped in this cycle. You need to understand your emotional relationship to money before you can create a system that works for you. Taylor
Swift should write a song about that very question. I think she would be so insightful and genius. Erin, thank you for your time today, and congrats on this latest in the series.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be back.
Erin Lowry is the author of the Broke Millennial Workbook. You got to check it out. It's very like do this, do that, very practical. And I think the insight is powerful. The style is engaging in and of itself, just the way that it's written.